Hello and welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joe Lalgee, the realist recruiter. I am super excited for today's episode. I've got somebody who probably this is the first time on an episode that I've had somebody who has more followers than me on LinkedIn. So super excited for today's guest. And then as always, we are going to be talking about things that are trending, job search trends, recruitment trends, and looking at what is actually going on in the market. What are some of the bad takes that people have? What are some of the struggles that people are having? So it's my pleasure today to have Melissa Grabiner with me today. If you don't know Melissa, Melissa is really well known on LinkedIn. I think you've got, what is it, 350,000 followers. She has been in the recruitment space for a while, and I
Long
mean
time.
in the best way, and has worked at a lot of really large companies like Takeda, Walters, Kluwer, and right now she's with Christine Matthews Consulting, leads up talent acquisition, and then also an advisor at a company called Limelight, and a job search expert and advisor at Topmate. And you can actually book Melissa to rewrite your resume and give you like LinkedIn advice, and we'll put those links on the show notes. But Melissa, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
So thank you. And I'm so happy to have this conversation with you. You are a legend in my mind, one of my favorite
Yeah.
people to follow on LinkedIn. Love your content. It's so spot on. It's humorous. It's thoughtful. You tell it like it is, which is one of the things I love about you. And it's just an honor to be talking to you.
Well, it's likewise, and I've been following your content. I mean, it's really since you started creating content. I think was it 2, 3 years ago now that you started
Yeah.
creating content. I don't usually like to have like the origin stories because I like to follow what's trending. But like, what kind of got started you, posting on LinkedIn? Like, what was kind of the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, so working in talent acquisition for over 20 years, I've always been dabbling in LinkedIn. It was about two
Yeah,
years ago where I started to get serious about it. And so many people would reach out to me on LinkedIn, and they still do, typically job seekers. They're frustrated, they're scared, they're upset, they need help, they need reassurances. And
yeah,
I was getting so many messages a day from people all over the world, a lot of people obviously based in the United States, and they were asking me for just my words of wisdom, any sort of help. And I thought to myself, I'm going to use this platform to be a voice of good and to be a voice to help the job seekers. So a lot of the
yeah. I love
things I
that.
post about are tips and tools to help job seekers, giving them some humor, some motivation. I also worked in HR for many years as an HR business partner. So I talk a lot about workplace culture, mental health, and my content kind of just started taking off. And I thought to myself, if people really care about what I have to say and if I'm adding value, then I'm going to keep using this platform to motivate job seekers and to help them in as many ways as I can. It's been a fun journey for sure. I've met a lot of great people like yourself. You're always someone that I've really, truly admired. But the relationships that I've built through LinkedIn and the podcasts I've done and the LinkedIn live events, and it's been so rewarding. And I'm sure you can relate to that too, right?
Yeah, I think when you start creating content, I think a lot of people start for different reasons. I know for me, I actually kind of came from a place of a little bit of obscurity in my job and just feeling like, all right, what am I doing? And like other ways I can, actually connect with. I was actually trying to connect with sales prospects without having to do cold calling. And that was a big motivator for me when I started creating. But then I just found like, oh, I really enjoy creating content and I enjoy writing. I enjoy doing video. I enjoy being able to help people at scale, like you said. And then, yeah, just being able to connect with people was kind of unbelievable to me. I remember it was actually about 5 years ago that I started creating content. And I remember like the first time that somebody DM'd me and was like, "Oh, I'm a fan of your content." I'm like, "What? What do you mean I'm a fan of my content? Like, I don't even know what content is." And so I think when you start from those places though of like not necessarily wanting to like monetize things or wanting to like make money from it, I find that people who start from like more of those pure intentions, they tend to grow even quicker because there's just more authenticity behind there as well. The big challenge with creating content is it takes a lot of energy. And I think you have probably found this as well, where you get to a
Yes.
certain point, you're like, all right, I need to potentially monetize this to like justify the time that I'm spending doing it. And so talk us through a little bit about that because obviously you've been able to like monetize different things. Like, what was that journey like, and like,
Yeah.
what advice, I guess, would you give to other people that are maybe thinking about monetizing or have like the aspiration to be able to monetize their brand as well?
Yeah, so it was so interesting. My LinkedIn really took off around October of 2023. There was one post I did that had like, I think 30,000 impressions. It just went gangbusters. There were like thousands of people that shared it. And all of a sudden, my follower count kept growing and growing and growing.
Yeah,
What was happening around that time is that there were companies reaching out to me saying, I really love your content. Do you want to work with me in a brand partnership where you post about our company? And again, it never occurred to me to monetize working on LinkedIn and being active on the platform because that was never my intention. But then when companies started contacting me, I had a conversation with my husband and we thought we might have something here. And so the companies that I work with, I'm very selective. First of all, they have to be in my sphere. I have a lot of fintech companies contact me, and I appreciate any company that wants to work with me, but my audience predominantly are not fintech folks. So
sure.
for me to post about a company in fintech, I don't want my followers to say, why is Melissa posting about something that she never posts about? Like authenticity is everything to me.
Yeah,
So the companies that I work with, I have to believe in their value. I have to believe in their brand and their mission, and it has to align with my core audience. If all of those things fall into place, and if I'm able to post something that I truly think will help job seekers, those are the companies that I work with. But yes, I'm very strategic about it. I'm very thoughtful about it, very methodical about it. There are many companies that I've turned away, and I appreciate every company that wants to work with me,
yeah.
but I'm not going to work with every company that reaches out to me. It's been interesting monetizing from this because, again, that was never my intention when I joined LinkedIn, but it's been a fun journey, and I'm sure you can relate as well. I mean, I see your posts. I'm a big follower of yours. It's been fun monetizing for sure. I will say to anyone that is looking to grow their audience on LinkedIn, it takes time.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up one day and have 350,000 followers. It was a long process. And what I say to people that reach out to me about this, and I coach people on this as well, is that it doesn't happen overnight. You have to
Yeah.
be committed. It's not just about posting, but it's about forming relationships with people. It's about
Mm,
engaging in other people's posts. When I post something, I do my very best to respond to every single person who comments. And I usually typically hit about 90 to 100% of that. Depends obviously on how many comments I get, but it doesn't happen overnight. And I can't stress that enough because so many people want like that quick hit. Like,
yeah.
how am I going to grow my audience to 350,000 followers? I've been on LinkedIn for a while. I post probably 6 times a week. Once in a while, I'll post twice, depending if I have something strong that I want to say. But there are some days where I'm like, I need a break from this. I'm
Yeah.
tired of LinkedIn. I'm just being honest. It's very time consuming and it can be very, very tiring. So there are days where I'm like, I need a day away and I
Yeah.
take a day away. It's absolutely fine. But like anything, when you do it too much and it becomes too time consuming, it's important to take a step back and take a break.
100%. I think it's more work than people anticipate, and
Hmm.
the consistency is big, engaging with people is big, and it takes a lot of time. And I
Yeah.
think people underestimate that, and it's just more challenging than I think people really think it is. And even just the fact of like responding to 90% of your comments. I mean, if you get 200 comments, that's a lot of people to reply to.
Time
And
consuming.
yeah, I mean, I see people all the time that have like bought followers. I see it more on probably Instagram than LinkedIn, but I see some sort of kind of weird activity going on LinkedIn sometimes. But for example, on like Instagram, sometimes I'll see people with 10,000 views on a video, and they've got 9,000 likes on the post, and I'm like, that math is not adding up, okay? Because I when I get 10,000 views on a video, I get like 200 likes. So like after a
Hmm.
while, you start to see people who are taking shortcuts. But I think if you do it the right way, which is the best way to do anything, you really do have to be committed, and you got to be consistent, and you got to be patient. And now more than ever, you have to just realize it's competitive, right? There's a lot of people who are getting on this kind of creator and influencer bandwagon, for lack of a better term. So I'd be really curious, in terms of like the recruitment and kind of content marketing, like how have you kind of balanced between the two? Like how do you balance the day job and like the coaching and the influencer posts? Like how have you managed to strike a balance with that?
It's a struggle, to be honest with you. So in addition to a full-time job, I have two side businesses I started. One was
Oh my
the
gosh.
brand, yeah. So one was the brand partnerships. I actually work with my husband. We formed an LLC. He
Cool.
helps a lot with the actual writing of the content for my sponsored posts. He's a great business partner. He was a former chief marketing officer, and he's really, really smart.
Hmm.
So it's been a lot of fun working with him. And then the other business I started was helping job seekers, because what was happening is all these job seekers started reaching out to me on LinkedIn saying, do you help with resumes? Do you help with LinkedIn branding or LinkedIn optimization, profile optimization? Do you help with interview coaching? And so about 4 months ago, I started a small business where I help job seekers. There's actually a link on my page. It's been incredibly rewarding. It's a lot of fun to be able to help job seekers, and every time I get off a call, I feel good. I really help someone, and people really take my feedback seriously. And I've had a lot of job seekers I've helped, call me and say, I found a new job, and I know your resume writing helped, and I know everything we talked about was really helpful and instrumental in me getting this new position. And then on top of it, I'm a yoga instructor and I have two
Oh.
sons. So
Oh wow. What aren't you doing? That's the real question here.
I'm busy. I like being busy, but I'll tell you, being busy, it's hard balancing LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is so time consuming. I probably spend collectively 4 hours a day on the platform.
Wow.
Maybe like 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 30
Yeah.
minutes here. But I know in order to continue to engage my audience, I have to be consistent on LinkedIn. That's not to say I don't take a day off here and there, because I do. The
Yeah.
most important thing to me is engaging when people comment on my posts. I
Yeah.
feel, and when I comment back, they're usually not one words, like they're thoughtful
Yeah.
comments, because I feel like if people take the time to comment, I owe it to them to respond. I see a lot of creators out there, they create a post and they might have 300 comments, but they don't respond to any of the comments. And that's just my own personal opinion. I don't think that's right. I think my followers, I owe it to them to be responsive to them. And again, there are some posts that I do that have so many comments. There's just no way I'm able to get to
Yeah.
everybody. I have a lot going on. It's a lot to manage. My boys are in college, so I have to say that it's a lot easier because they're in college versus like if I have little kids, like I know you have small kids. There's no way I would be able to manage this all. I would need five of me to
Yeah.
do it. But I'm passionate about recruiting. I'm passionate about helping job seekers. And this LinkedIn journey has been incredibly rewarding and a lot of fun. And I feel blessed, as I'm sure you do, that we've been able to grow our followers. But not only, to me, it's not necessarily how many followers I have, but it's making a difference in people's lives. And if I can help, if I do even one post that helps one job seeker, then it's worth my post.
I love
That's
that.
really why I use LinkedIn, is to take my 20 years of experience working in talent acquisition, my approach of being honest and blunt, and I call things out as I see them. I don't sugarcoat things. There have been times where I've struggled with my mental health. I post about that. Everyone has their issues, everyone has their problems. My life by no means is perfect. And, I was at a company for 18 years. I got laid off. I didn't see it coming. My goal was to stay with this company for 30 years. My mental health took a huge beating. And then after I found a new job, I was laid off from that job 2 years later. So I know what it's like to be a job seeker. And part of the reason why I post about this is because I've been in their shoes before. Being laid off twice in a matter of 4 years, that's really hard. It's hard emotionally, physically. Your wallet takes a hit. It's hard. And so a lot of things I post about are from places where I know what it's like to be a job seeker. What's really challenging though is, and you'll, I'm sure, agree with this is a really tough job market we're in. Outside of what happened after COVID with the job market, I mean, this has been one of the toughest and most challenging job markets I could remember in years.
100%. I talk about it a lot, and even with that in mind, I want to check out our first piece, which is all about the job market. So I'm gonna share this. So this was on TikTok for anyone who isn't out there. You can, and on Instagram, I think you can do this as well. But this is a reaction post that I did, and I'm gonna play
Mhm.
it. And for anyone who can't see or who's just listening to this, the caption on the top says "Recruiter reacts to brutal job 2024 search." And if I was to coin one thing, or one thing that I've coined over the last probably year, is this term, like brutal, because I just think it describes what the corporate job market is like right now. So I'm going to play this video, and then I'd just be curious to kind of get your thoughts and your take on this. So I'm going to play this.
If you're looking for a job right now and feeling discouraged, just know that I applied to 1,623 companies before I got my current job offer. Throughout the whole process, I kept a really detailed list of all my applications, my interviews, everything I did. I just tallied up a bunch of statistics and my jaw's on the floor. I cannot believe it. But it may make you feel better if you're feeling really frustrated with the job search right now. So let me share. Okay. I received 795 total rejections. Wow. I interviewed with 61 different companies. So 60 of those rejections came after I'd done some kind of interview of sorts. I did 112 total interviews, and the most interviews I did with any single company was 6 rounds, 9 total calls, and I got rejected. I also did 32 total assessments. So this could be like case studies, take-home assignments, coding challenges, and just hypothetically, if you were to assume that each interview was 30 minutes, which many of them were longer, much longer, 112 interviews times 30 minutes, that equates to 56 hours of interviewing. And last thing, the job that I ended up getting was 4 rounds of interviews, each 30 minutes. This is my third full-time corporate job, and I will say I have never, ever had to apply to nearly as many jobs in the past. Like the job I had before this, that one I remember being kind of tough to find, and I think I applied to like less than 200. So if you're facing a lot of rejection, you feel like it's endless applications, let this be your motivation, because you just got to put your head down and do the work and you'll see results.
Look, I'm sure, you work with a lot of job seekers, right? So you kind of hear stories like this. When you hear people who are on job searches like this, or you hear these stories about how many applications people are filling out, what are your thoughts around that? And like, how are you coaching and guiding the job seekers that you're working with? Like, what's kind of your strategy that you would give them on the job search? When you hear stories like this.
I actually watched this video before our call, and my jaw dropped. My jaw dropped in disbelief, but my jaw didn't drop in disbelief, because my heart goes out to this gentleman of what he had to endure. But at the same time, this is very common in today's environment that we're in, unfortunately. When I coach job seekers, there's 2 things that I think are really important for anyone looking for a job right now, is to have a really strong resume and to have an optimized LinkedIn profile. I can't stress enough. I think there are so many people that, even the people that I coach, that their LinkedIn profile is very bare. There's no content. There's no depth behind it. And then I look at the resumes that they created, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to help you with your resume here. It's incredibly important to have like the best resume you can and the best optimized profile that you can. But what I would also say to job seekers is that you have to take steps to differentiate yourself. I'll give you an example. My current job, I found by sending a note to the CEO on LinkedIn of my company, because I knew I had to differentiate myself. What job seekers need to do is, it's not enough anymore to apply to a job and let your resume sit in the applicant tracking system. What job seekers need to do is find out who the recruiters are at the company, or maybe try to figure out who the hiring manager is. Send a note to those people directly on LinkedIn. That is how you are going to stand out. You have to be able to do something to stand out from the rest of the applications and the rest of the people that you're competing against. Not everyone is active on LinkedIn. Not everyone is going to reply to you on LinkedIn. But when I was looking for a job, both of those times, what I did was I literally sent a message to at least one person, if not 2, at the companies that I applied to, with a small paragraph, who I am, why I was interested in the role, with a copy of my resume. And then if I didn't hear from them, 2 to 3 days later, I would follow up with them. You have to take your job search. What's that?
So following up is I think massively underrated, because the amount of messages I get, and I'm sure you're the same way, where people are like, I'm desperate to speak to you, blah, 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 that it's like, a lot, like 98% of people do not send a follow-up message, and LinkedIn inbox is so terrible. If you don't send a message, what happens is you kind of like fall down into this black hole, and the only way to get on top of the inbox is to send another message. And I actually found that, this is more in sales than looking for a job, but they're kind of similar, right? Sales and looking for a job. I found that on LinkedIn, when I was really selling my training services to talent leaders, and so these are kind of similar profiles of people would want to reach, my response after sending 3 messages was like 80%. And I found that 80% of my responses came after the 3rd message. And in my mind, I don't want to annoy these people. What I found was it wasn't really annoying. It was actually helpful for them, because they get so many messages from people that, like, if you're not at the top, or you're not like one of those first 10 messages, they might not scroll down to see that message. And so I actually had a lot of people that were like, thank you for following up, which I think in your mind, you could think, oh, I don't want to bug people. I don't want to annoy people. It's actually helpful for people because we're just bombarded with messages nowadays.
The other thing, and I totally agree with that. The other thing is when I'm recruiting for my positions at my company, I love when people send me messages on LinkedIn because it shows me that they're proactive in their job search. To me, it
Mm,
shows a level of professionalism, and it actually helps me because if I'm looking to hire, let's say, a medical director, and I have 200 applicants in my ATS, which is not uncommon, I usually get more. Those people stand out to me. And if someone reaches out to me on LinkedIn, I'm always going to take a look at their profile. I'm always going to take a look at their resume. It makes my job easier when people reach out to me. But in today's very dynamic environment, job seekers have to do things that are going to make them stand out, which is exactly why at my current company, I sent a message to the CEO on LinkedIn. And I thought to myself, it's going to go one of two ways. Either she's going to respond or she's not going to respond. And
yeah,
if she doesn't respond, at least I know I tried, right? And so you got to be your own best advocate. You got to differentiate yourself. That's just simply the environment that we're in right now. I will say this too, and I'd love your opinion on this. I've been recruiting for many years, and what I've noticed is every couple years the pendulum kind of changes. So right
mm,
now we are in what I would call an employer-driven market. Employers are calling the shots. It will again be a candidate driven market where the candidates are going to call the shots, which always goes back to the candidate experience. I can't tell you the types of posts that I see on LinkedIn and people reaching out to me with their horror stories.
yeah,
I interviewed 8 times. I created a presentation, took me 4 hours to complete. I interviewed 3 months ago and I never heard back from the company. And the amount of ghosting that's going on and just the way so many job seekers are treated with just pure disrespect,
yeah,
it really upsets me and it's uncalled for and it's not okay. And job seekers are going to remember the way they've been treated by these companies. And what I'm also starting to see on LinkedIn are people posting with the company name, calling out these companies that are treating these candidates like crap, to be quite honest with you.
yeah,
Companies need to be careful because this is how reputations are killed.
yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I had an interview not too long ago on my podcast with a talent leader at UPS, and I mean UPS, they get 2 million applications a year. And the interesting thing with UPS is each one of those applicants could be a potential customer, right? Because UPS, they have
Right.
a lot of customers. So they were able to make, I think, 300,000 hires in 3 months. And in that, if you haven't checked out that episode, definitely go check out that episode because the guy who led the team like really breaks it down, like how and why. And I asked him about Canada's experience, and he was like, "Yeah, it's pretty simple actually. Like people care about timely communication, they care about transparency, they just want to hear from people, right? Like in a timely manner. And when you view, and I said, well, what was the secret to this? And his answer was like, well, we view everybody as a potential customer. So if somebody we have a bad experience with someone in the hiring process, we might lose a customer, and that customer 30 years of mailing stuff, that could be, it could be a substantial customer. And you think you got 2 million of those people applying. It's a decent customer base. And I agree with you. I just think the mentality and the Canada experience right now is an absolute low. And I think really the tragedy right now is there's a lot of recruiters who are looking, and it's like recruiter on recruiter ghosting that's going on. And I can't believe it. And I want to show you another post. I'd be curious to get your take on this. So this is actually from a recruit. This isn't from a recruiter. This is from, I don't know what the best way to describe this person is. A TikTok influencer. For anyone who is watching this, I have strategically blocked out this person's name because I don't want to be too mean. This is the post. So it says, job searching is like dating. Ding, 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 red flag already. Don't look thirsty on LinkedIn. Job searching is like dating. So it kind of repeats that line. You don't want to look desperate. Having an open to work banner on your LinkedIn profile makes you look desperate. There's a private open to work button that only recruiters see. And then also don't use a graduation picture as your profile photo. These things don't convey confident thought leader. They convey desperate. Don't be desperate. And in case you guys don't know this, if you ever look at a LinkedIn post and it has more comments than likes, there's a good chance that people are getting really upset about the post. And we've talked about the open to work banner before on this podcast. But when you see posts like this from people who, just for some clarity here, this person's headline on LinkedIn said social media strategy personal brands, TikTok creator. So there's no recruiting or hiring. There's nothing in there which would suggest experience with recruiting and hiring. When you see posts like this, like what are your thoughts? And like, when job seekers ask you, like, how do you kind of respond to the whole open to work controversy?
So this post truly makes my blood boil. There is nothing desperate about telling people you're open to work. Most of us need a job to survive. LinkedIn is a platform in part to help people find roles. There is nothing desperate about telling people you're looking for a new opportunity. And as a recruiter myself, when I'm looking to fill jobs, why would I not reach out to people who I know are looking for a job? I find there's nothing desperate at all about telling people you're open to work. LinkedIn added this feature for a banner for a reason. This is a heated topic. I see so many posts about this, not so much recently, like maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, there was a lot of noise on LinkedIn about this. I saw people fighting on LinkedIn, literally threads and threads and threads of people going back and forth and bantering about this.
It's crazy.
Um, there's nothing wrong with letting people know you're open to work. I don't see how that's desperate. People need jobs to survive. That's just the reality. Most people work because they need the money to survive. There's
Yeah.
nothing desperate about conveying that you're open for a new opportunity, but certainly would love your thoughts on this as well.
Look, I'll be honest with this one. I think there are a group of people that do view an open to work banner as desperate, or they do view it as potentially like there's something wrong with you. But these are also the same hiring managers that will say, if you're on a job search for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, they'll also take the point of view of like, well, if no one else wanted you, then
Yeah,
why would we want you?
right.
And what I would say is like, you're always going to have that group of people who are like that. You're always going to have those hiring managers like that. And I've worked with hiring managers like that, but that's not the full percentage of people. And I'd also argue that, in the times when I've worked with hiring managers who have that perspective, I've been able to challenge them on that and say, look, like you're looking at the wrong things. Like what you really need to be looking at is, does this person have the right accomplishments? Do they have
Yeah,
the right skills? Like, can they do the job well? Are they going to be a good addition to the team? That's what I try and have them focus on. And I
yeah.
think if you are running into people who are viewing, an open to work banner on LinkedIn as, a really negative thing, I probably argue that they might not be someone you want to work with anyway. It rings true if that's the perspective that people have. But I will say, like, now we're just in a time where the majority of people over the last 5 years have had some sort of job change. There's a lot of people that have experienced layoffs and rifts, that have had to job hop, that have had to make moves. There's people who have had multiple layoffs over the last 5 years. And so I think the overall climate now is, let's just focus on like, what are your abilities? What are your accomplishments? What have
Mhm.
you done? And I think that's really the majority of people. So even if there's like one or two like CEOs who are like, yeah, I would never hire someone with open to work, I think now they are in the minority. And I think there has
Yeah.
been a massive mind shift. With that being said, I absolutely agree with you to your point prior, where it's like we are in that landscape right now where it's extremely competitive for these corporate jobs. So you do have to take that extra step to try and separate yourself from other people. And I think if you're not doing those things, you're going to miss out on opportunities without a doubt. And anybody I've talked to who's landed a job quickly, they always have put in additional effort into following up or reaching out to people. That being said, I still have talked to people who are like, yeah, I just applied and got the job, right? And it's like, that still does happen. But most people I've talked to, they have, to coin that classic term, they have made looking for a job like their full-time job. They put a lot of effort into it.
I
So
think
I
look,
so I agree with you on that.
yeah, I think looking for a job is a full-time job. I think it is. I think the competitiveness in the landscape that we're currently in, and I'm sure you see this too, but there are some postings on LinkedIn that have 2,000 applicants.
It's
I
crazy.
personally, if I saw that, I wouldn't even bother applying,
Well,
especially
you would,
because,
because you got 350,000 followers on LinkedIn. You could just be like, hey.
well, yeah, there you go. There you go.
You
But
could be like,
yeah,
I'm the personality hire, move over.
yeah. The one thing I do want to say to job seekers, though, and I truly believe this, is that
Yeah,
this time is not going to last forever. I do think that the job
100%.
market is going to shift. I hope it happens sooner versus later. There are so many amazing and talented individuals looking for work. I mean, I coach people that are senior vice presidents. I coach PhDs. I coach medical doctors. I mean, these are people that are very accomplished, that have great job stability. I mean, these are people that have incredible educational backgrounds and incredible work experience that are part of a layoff, and it's no fault of theirs, right? There's so many companies that are laying off, and you could be the top performer, but if a company, they lose a major client, or they don't get approval for an FDA drug. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen within a business that would cause a company to lay off their employees. And many times it's not, I would say the vast majority of the time, it's not the fault of the individual. It's a broader business decision. I mean, I was caught up in 2 layoffs. I was
Yeah.
always a top performer at all the companies I've worked at based on my performance reviews. And so it's about not taking it personally and realizing that you just got to put in 110% into your job search, and just know that this time is not going to last forever. Job seekers will eventually find a job, but it's taking those extra steps, as you and I talked about, to differentiate yourself and try to get in the face or in the hands of a recruiter or a hiring manager. That's what job seekers need to do. It's not anymore, let's just apply, post and pray, and cross our fingers that someone's going to review my resume, but it's taking those extra steps like we talked about earlier. Reach out to a recruiter, see if you know someone at the company, see if you have a mutual connection. You
Yeah.
know, I have a lot of people reach out to me and say, I applied to XYZ company. I see you're associated, or you're connected with so-and-so who works at this company. Can you make an introduction? And I'm always willing to help when I can. But those are the measures and the steps that job seekers need to take. They have to dig a little bit deeper and see, do they know someone at the company? Do they have a connection that works at the company? Take those extra steps, because that might be the difference of getting an interview or not.
No, 100%. And I think that's, I remember I was about 2 years ago. Yeah, it was 2 years ago in July. I was working for an agency in Chicago, and we were doing a lot of hiring for recruiters. And I mean, the demand for recruiters in 2021 was insane. And like for the first half of 2022, it was the same way. It was like you could not find a recruiter because there was so much demand. And it was definitely a candidate's market. That's where we saw the great resignation. We saw remote work was out there. Pay was super high. And I remember in July, I switched into more of like a business development role for this agency. And one of the ways that we would source new business is we would look for companies that were hiring recruiters, because that would be an indication that they were going to hire, right? Like you hire
Right.
recruiters when you're looking to hire. I remember that was like a month-long period where like I just started seeing these companies, on their internal job boards. Like I just started seeing these recruiter jobs just falling off. Like I could not find recruiter job postings. I'm like, man, something's going on. And I also spent a decent amount of time the year before recruiting recruiters, and it was like I was getting reached out to by a lot of recruiters who had been impossible to reach, and they were all saying the same thing. They were all like, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous because my requisition load, which is the amount of jobs they work on, it's getting lower and lower and lower. At that moment, I'm like, all these red flags went up in my mind. And I'm a little bit extreme. So I'm like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. But I remember just thinking, like, oh, something is going on here. But that was 2 years ago. And so when you look statistically at how long these kind of like downturns last, and we're talking about like corporate jobs here, right? Not high volume or healthcare or government. We're talking about corporate for profit positions. It's 2 years ago that we started to see the shift. So to your point, I do think it is a matter of time to where we start to see more optimism from these corporations hiring. But there is also that part of me where I'm like, there's a big focus right now and emphasis on AI, automation, getting more done with less people. Even that'll change over time. I don't think it's going to happen quickly, but it will change over time. And so I think if you're a job seeker, like you have to keep your mindset on that, and you have to keep putting in the work, unfortunately. Well, I know we're up for time, and unfortunately here, maybe we'll do like another session. Like I'd love to get even like a group podcast together where we just kind of, even open it up to questions in our community. But where can people find you? I know LinkedIn's one place, but any other places that people can find you and connect with you? And we'll put these links in the comments. Like where would be the best place that you would recommend people reach out, considering you have such a high volume of people reaching out?
No, I appreciate you asking. So LinkedIn is probably the best avenue. I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. There is also a link on my page if someone's interested in help from me in terms of interview prep, LinkedIn branding, profile optimization, resume review. I've helped, God, since I started this business, I've helped almost 70 job seekers, and
Wow.
it's so much fun. Yeah, it's incredibly rewarding, and I've been in talent acquisition for a really long time, so I do tend to think that I could probably help you if you
Yeah.
need help. But thank you for asking that.
Yeah, and look, guys, I always say like a big piece on like finding people to help you in a job search is like, do you resonate with the message that they have? Do you look at their background and see the experience in HR or talent acquisition or some sort of business leadership generally is what I look for. And I also look for people who are not putting out like unreasonable expectations in posts. Like I cringe a lot of times when I see like the post where it's like, here's a hack to blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh my God, why are you talking about hacks on the job search? There's no
Right, right,
hacks. Okay, there's getting things right and working hard on the job search.
right.
So I will put these links for your LinkedIn, and I believe it's TopMate is
Tell
the
me, yeah.
other link. So we'll make sure both those links are in. If you do want to connect with Melissa, I know there's a 30,000 connection limit on LinkedIn that you guys need to be aware of. So if you send a connection request, I think you need to be patient on this one, but I would definitely suggest following Melissa, commenting on her post. She just admitted in this podcast that she tries to get back to everybody. So comment on those posts, get involved in the community. But I always say, if you're going to reach out to someone on the podcast, just be patient because, a lot of times, people have a lot of stuff going on. So my rule is patient, persistent, and polite. So
Love
always
it.
use those three things. Do not get, mean with people if they're not responding back to you. But Melissa, it's been great. I'm so glad we finally got to
Me
make this
too.
happen. And I know we're local, so who knows? We might even do like some kind of local job fair or something like that. Who knows? We could make something happen.
Or we could
But
just meet for coffee. That works
meet for
too.
coffee too. That's fun for me. I don't know how
Yeah.
valuable that is for all the job seekers out there. But yeah, either way, we will make something happen in real life. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And yeah, and for everyone else who has made it this far, thank you so much. Remember, if this podcast was helpful, subscribe, share. Share it with people who are looking on the job search or for recruiters that are looking for inspiration. We will be back next week with another guest as well. And if you're looking to be a guest on the podcast or you're looking to sponsor the podcast, please, please, please reach out to me on my website, www.therealistrecruiter.com. We'll be back next week. Thank you so much, guys.